We're sitting here with Devin, who's way in Spain. We're talking over Skype, and yeah, I don't actually know Devin. This is my I guess my first official podcast with a non-friend. I live on YouTube a lot, and I watch a lot of videos. And I found Devin's channel, which is Atheism is Unstoppable, 1 and 2, and I found these videos hilarious. So I contacted Devin just to see if he wanted to chat to see what's up, and he said yes. There he is.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So
I've never been referred to as a non-friend before. I love that.
yeah, well, maybe we'll be friends, but like, this is the first
Yeah.
time we're meeting. This is pretty crazy.
No. I got 7 billion non-friends. It's not new to me.
Yeah, so we actually were just recording a second ago, and we are talking about where we're from. I'm from Victoria, BC, and Devin's from Spain. He's in Barcelona right now, but he was just saying that. What were you just saying? It's like 6 in the morning here. What time is it for you? It's like 9,
It's
8.
3:30 in the afternoon.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But for me, it feels like it's 9 in the morning because I just woke up.
Yeah. So maybe I'll give you a second to tell everyone who's listening. Who's really not really anybody, but I have like 12 views on my other podcast, but whatever.
It's a weird thing, man. Let me tell you, like when I first made a video, like I didn't care at all about views, and it's a good thing because I didn't get any views. And then I got like 10 views, and I was like, oh sweet, 10 people saw what I did. And then I got 100, and then I got 1,000, and then it gets into this weird thing of like it then starts to matter to you.
Yeah.
Why am I just talking to myself? But then you go through another like sort of evolution. And then you're like, do I really care about this little digital counter? Like, does that define who I am and why I do what I do? So it is a weird thing that you have to sort of grapple with.
Yeah, but again, for anyone who might follow these videos or the podcast, is I'm actually doing this for my son, not for me. My son passed away when I was sorry. My father passed away when I was 5, and so I just had a son. He's 2.5, and so I wanted to record a few things so that you know who I am as a person and sort of see what I was getting up to in my 30s, 31.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so one day, hopefully, if the world doesn't explode, he'll fall upon these YouTube clips or the podcast files or whatever, and just sort of hear my voice and some of the crazy things that I thought. But
Yeah, I think I've always anticipated that more people would do that. I mean, I think with the technology and the ease, I think that's an awesome thing. Like, I would love to know what my grandfather thought, and said.
yeah,
And I think now that's possible.
yeah, totally. Like I was saying in a previous podcast, my father actually someone wrote an article about him. Maybe I'll send it to you directly because it's a first name basis on this podcast. The number one rule is don't say anything that gets you fired because I have a day job. But anyway, so he it's so hilarious. But he protested at a Christmas parade in Toronto. Just googling my family name, and I was like, whoa! Like he had like a pretty interesting story. Like a lot of the things that I didn't hear.
What was the basis of his protest?
Um, well, basically, well, this is kind of why I found you on the internet. So my father was big into religion, but not in the sense of like he was following any particular one. Looking back at his library, he had like almost every religious book on the planet, right? He had like Dianetics, he had the Quran, he had the Bible, he had all of that stuff, right? So anyways, he just came to this realization that Christmas was just a fraud. It was money-making scheme. It was bad for kids and all this stuff. So he basically, when the Santa actually made it through the parade, he pulled out his placard and started running around. And I have photos of him like, and this is multiple years. This isn't just 1 year of him like naked in the middle of December in Toronto with a placard, saying Santa isn't real and running around and the police like chasing after him and all this stuff. He has a protesting criminal record against all things Christmas.
Wow, that is a one-man jihad against Christmas.
Yeah, he definitely didn't like it. But what's really funny, like again, like I didn't really know him too much. Like I still have memories, but that I have that in me as well. Like maybe I should explain some of my history here. I grew up as a Seventh-day Adventist, which is this weird Christian religion. I wouldn't say it's a cult. Like it's not at the Jehovah Witness status, but they still have very particular beliefs, and it's a very critical religion in the sense that you have to know what other religions believe to counter their ideologies and theology. So it was always a, know what the Catholics know, so that you can, tear down Catholic ideas if you're ever in a discussion. So anyway, long story short, I applied that to 7-Day Adventism and it just fell apart. And so I found Devin's channel because I guess you were just, at the time, you were tearing into Christians a lot, primarily. And, I was thinking about why I think your videos are so funny. And for anyone out there, I'll put the link in the description so that you can check out these videos. But I think you break the fourth wall a lot. Like you're doing a commentary video on a video that you found, but you talk about what you're thinking. You're addressing the person as if they can hear you, but you're also addressing your YouTube audience and the people that follow your channel. And the speed and the wit at which you do that it's just hilarious. It's just something. It's just amazing. So.
Wow, I've never thought of it that way. That's interesting. Yeah, because I do sort of talk to the people in the video in a theatrical way, but I'm basically talking to atheists.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of different types of atheist content and channels out there, and I think I'm not like a lot of those guys. Like a lot of people want to argue and talk about the issues and like bring up points almost as if they're giving it credibility, like as if there's something to argue about. Mm-hmm. I've been an atheist my whole life, and I mean, without sounding cocky, which is always ominous to say before you say something, I know I'm right. I have the entirety of the scientific community, every fact, every logical thing you could throw at it is behind me, and this is not a new revelation for me that I know I'm right. This has been confirmed over a lifetime. Now that doesn't mean I'm 100% sure, but I'm 99.99% sure. I'm as sure that I'm right about this that I am a man. Like that's how sure I am.
Wow.
And I don't have like a third nipple, or I didn't go through any surgeries or have weird hormones. I know I'm a man. So I don't know. I think humor is my way of dealing with the insanity, and at the core, it's a lot of anger. It's actually resentment that I have to coexist with these people.
Mm-hmm.
When you grow up and you go through school, nobody ever tells you what the world is filled with. You sort of assume that the adults have figured it out. Everything is rational and sane. I'm going to sort of enter into this world that makes sense. And with the help of YouTube and the internet, what we find is the exact opposite. We're not even remotely in a world like that. And even nowadays, like think about Russia. What did you know about Russia before YouTube versus after YouTube? Like, now that we see what's going on in Russia with the webcam, with the cameras on their cars.
Yeah, I was about to say the car cams. They're just...
Yeah.
It's a gong show over there.
Ridiculous. It's way more weird and bizarre than we'd even thought in the 80s. Like, it is out of control. And that goes for all these religious groups. What's going on in Syria? If we didn't have the internet, this would be like some vague story on page 10 of a newspaper.
Yeah.
But no, we're seeing this in living color, and it's profound how we react to it. There's no guideline on how to react to this. There's no precedent in human history of how does a morally serious individual in the 21st century incorporate all of this insanity. What do? So for me, I try to use humor. I try to consolidate, find like-minded individuals to sort of, so that we can both marvel at it. But it's not a solution. It's just a coping mechanism.
Yeah, it's like, again, like I was talking earlier about 7-Day Adventism, because that's primarily what I know. But like, they have levels. Like when you meet a 7-Day Adventist and you ask them, what do you believe? Like you get like, level 1 information. But at the end of the day, you don't realize that like they believe in aliens. They have a prophet that they actually hold quite dear. Like there's a lot of ideas that you can't question, and if you question them, then you're pushed to the fringe. And
where are they based? I'm looking at the wiki page. It's like Michigan here. It says.
Well, it's a world organization, right? I think they have like 10 million members, if I'm not mistaken, or at least
18 million.
Oh wow! Well, that's more than when I was involved. I've been out for about 7 years now, and basically they believe that Jesus was supposed to come back in 1844, but he obviously didn't. So anyway, they twisted their doctrine to believe that he came back. He came back to heaven in a sense and started his priestly work. No one can see me, but I'm doing air quotes right now. And so basically, he's in heaven right now judging the planet. And once he's finished, which I don't know why it takes so many years, but once he's finished, he's going to come down and, separate the good people from the bad people. And there you go. But they believe in it's like a nightmare fest. Like,
yeah.
They believe
it sounds like it's a lot of like Mormonism, sort of in the sense that it came around in a similar time period.
Yeah.
And a little bit of Scientology, a little bit of alien stuff. I mean, it's mixed in with some, like, do you guys celebrate Halloween and stuff, or is that?
No, they ban a lot of things, right? So they follow the 7-day Sabbath, which is like for what Jewish people do. They follow kosher laws, so you're not allowed to eat, pork or shellfish or camel or anything like that.
Camel.
Yeah, well, if you, I don't know if you're out in the Middle East or whatever. I don't know. Do they even do that? Maybe, I don't know. Just making stuff up. But
I love the fact that like 99% of the analogies they use in the Bible are all about goats and sheep.
Yeah, everything that was in the Middle East at the time.
It's within 5 miles of the guy writing it. I love
it. Yeah. Kangaroos would be on the list, I imagine, but you have to infer that. So it's absolutely crazy. But why I wanted to bring that up is like what you were saying about how you sort of lived an atheist life. I think that like people who are religious that lose their religion and become an atheist or whatever else. What's very interesting about that is I've noticed that they sort of have a cultural belief that they hold on to. So like your knowledge of like, this is all I know. This is as true as, as how I feel in my own identity. Like, I think there's still like a yearning to that cultural identity that you sort of followed with, right? Like in my podcast number 3 and 4 for the listeners, I talked to a former Jehovah's Witness, and like we're going to talk a little bit more about like how his struggles in like joining the rest of the world because of his ideas. And even me, like I have a few things that I won't go back on. Like I still eat kosher despite knowing that nothing matters. Like it's just I look at a piece of pork and I'm just like, you know what, I just can't do this. It's just so wrong. And I was listening to the Thinking Atheist podcast, and he actually had a really fair discussion on the Charlie Hebdo stuff, where he actually had on a few people saying, one, that free speech trumps all, but two, there was this person, air quotes again, an atheist Muslim, who basically, he still loves the things that brought his family together, but he like just dropped everything else. So like he still thinks Ramadan is great, but that's it. So right. I think that like there's like your audience and your last video, I'll put that link too. You basically were talking about, was it Bionic, what's her name?
Dance.
Yeah, Bionic Dance. This I assume a former Christian who didn't like your current commentary, and I wanted to ask you a little bit about what you're talking about now in your podcast a little bit more. Not your podcast, your YouTube video. Because you're talking a lot about Islam and the Muslim faith and all that stuff. And I think you're getting a lot of flack, which you're kind of surprised at, maybe? Or what's going on with your YouTube channel right now?
Flack from who?
Well, you talk a lot about, you've been doing a lot with the Young Turks and talking about, is it Sank or Jank? I don't even watch his show. Jank. And sort of the PC culture that you see on mainstream TV, right. That sort of I don't even know the right word to use, but in light of the things that have happened, they sort of place blame on right. on those artists. But
it's funny. Yeah, we don't have a word yet to describe them that entails everything that they are. So you have to sort of preface it with a bunch of words, because just to call them liberals or PC, it doesn't quite encapsulate what they're about.
Right.
But yeah.
But they're not everybody. Like again, like you, the Thinking Atheist, and the podcast called Cognitive Dissidence, they've done actually a pretty fair, like, it doesn't matter what someone said. You shouldn't murder somebody. Like, there's anyway, if you could go on about what you're talking about now and sort of the main issue that you're sort of dealing with.
So, yeah, I mean, basically, if I step back and look at the content of my channel, the things that I started with was just an overwhelming irritation about Kirk Cameron. Like, Kirk Cameron putting out movies, and him and that shit-eating grin that he has, there's no way that I could not react to that. So, like, I need to at least, and I don't care if that got 2 views or 100 views or 100,000 views, which it has at my first video. Like, it had to be said, just as a cleansing process, you know, like, and so why do I focus on Christians? Because I'm American. And so I am surrounded by Christianity. That is the idiotic Iron Age faith that is, you know, all-encompassing in America, as you know. So it makes sense for me to address those guys. Like, the Islamic world was like, the other thing about Muslims and Islam is that they are so far removed, in my estimation, from being reasoned out of it. You know, they are so backwards and so far behind the curve that it's almost like just wasting your breath. The Christians, we have movement. We have a mass exodus from religion. Yourself, the Thinking Atheists, the Atheist Experience people, all these are examples of people leaving the faith. I mean, you look at countries like England and everywhere in Europe. I mean, it's dying. Yep. It's dying a slow death. So that is at least encouraging at some point. And I mean, basically, if you're willing to argue with somebody, what you're saying is, part of me cares about this. Part of me thinks that there's a chance that what I'm saying will have an impact on you and will maybe change some of your mind. With the Muslim world, it's like, whoa, dude. I look at some of these videos and my mouth is just wide open. I mean, what can you say to this? There was some video the other day I was looking at where a guy was saying, is it possible to cast the evil eye on yourself? You know, I'm like, where do you start to reason with that? Like, it's... So anyway, that the next shift, and based on current events, was to talk about Islam. Obviously, this is a major global threat, and this is the pressing issue of our time, basically. I don't know where you want to draw that line, but from 9/11 to, you know, these wars to the mass beheadings and jihad and slaughter. But then, an even worse problem, in my estimation, is the response from these politically correct, self-hating, white guilt-ridden liberals, who, progressives, these hyper-progressive people that want to blame the victims. They want to blame anything. They want to deflect and avoid the real issue. Because they're crippled. They're paralyzed.
What I think is really interesting is, like, if you sent these people to live in the Middle East and told them, just do your show the same way you're doing it now, it would last 6 seconds. Like,
they'd be dead, instantly dead. Like, Rosie O'Donnell is defending the Islamic faith. You know, that's the level we're at.
Yeah,
she would be killed for about 10 different reasons.
And the Ben Affleck, like, as much as he's Ben Affleck, it would be over in 6 seconds.
Right, and it's insidious. It's a sinister denial. It's not just some innocent, oh, look, they're just being sympathetic, and they want to sing Kumbaya and just say, can't we all just get along? I don't know if you remember the LA riots, Rodney King.
Well, I have to say, like, again, I'm 31. I don't even know when that happened. Was that early 90s? I must have been a kid.
Early 90s. So, like, Rodney King, he was famously quoted after this basically race war broke out in LA. He was quoted as saying, can't we all just get along?
Oh, yeah.
And it was a rhetorical question. But the answer to the question is no. Now, it would be nice. You could wake up and be like, you know what? We can't all get along. If we just say the right things, then the problem will go away. It'll disappear. But no, there actually is a problem with race relations in America and all around the world. And just saying nice things doesn't make that go away. So as an atheist, as somebody who's skeptical by nature, I prefer to live in reality. I prefer an honest assessment of what is actually happening. So when I hear people like these fellow atheists, so be it, talk about, trying to diminish what is happening in the Muslim world and saying, Christians have bad people too. Let's not forget the Crusades. Let's not forget the Salem witch trials. Let's not forget the KKK. I mean, these attempts at false equivalence are pathetic and laughable and need to be pointed out. And I'll tell you why. The reason is they are as much a problem as the problem. Let me give you an example. If my leg was on fire, that's a problem. Okay, I should probably address that. Now, let me ask you this: what is a bigger problem, that my leg is on fire, or that I am unwilling to accept that my leg is on fire? I'm unwilling to recognize that my leg is on fire. Which is a bigger problem? And
Yeah.
to me, it's my mental state, and I'm not even willing to acknowledge the fire on my leg.
Yeah.
Because
Again,
once I acknowledge it, I
one of
can do
the
something about it.
one of the main reasons why I wanted to interview you to get this take is like the friends that know me. It's like I'm pro free speech and I'm anti thought crime. So like if anyone has a belief or an ideology that says that they can't think about a thing or they can't do a thing, I'm the first to say, you know what, fair game. This is crazy. But like you're totally right. There's a, I would say in the media, there's and especially just people in general, there's a very they tiptoe a lot around a lot of things. There's not too many people that actually call things that the way they're that it is. Like again, like I want to call back to the Sam Harris interview. All of his interviews, he's basically he sort of calls it like it is. Like if you live in reality, but you have a belief that sort of pulls you away from that, then who are you as a person? Like we can't truly interact in a way that sort of brings us forward. Like it's crazy. And that being said, like I have a lot of I have a lot of Muslim friends. Like I grew up in Toronto, which is highly multicultural, and I grew up in an area like I would say about half my high school friends are Muslim, and it just never, you know, when you're a kid, so it never came up. But at the end of the day, looking at it, like, and this goes for just a lot of religions, anyways. But like, there's an ideology there that separates us as people, and it's so strange. I wish there was a way to sort of get together. And again, like the Thinking Atheist podcast, like the guy was talking about, like you can culturally be something and be totally against what it stands for, and so like you can actually stand up against people that critique it. But as long as there's people that are, you know, preventing a critique of bad ideas, then we have a problem.
Right, and this is obviously with the Charlie Hebdo thing. I mean, the whole point is blasphemy laws are exactly the opposite of what you're saying. I mean, you know, the thing is, you have a bunch of Muslim friends growing up, and when people are young, they're young and they're, you know, they're just living their life. But I wonder sometimes about these friendships. You know, I wonder, did you ever talk about Jews or women with these people? Did you ever hash these differences out? I mean, because these differences are not small. You know, these are massive disparity between Western values and Muslim way of thinking. I mean, the Islamic faith is not compatible, definitely not with Canada. Although, I will say, to my shock and horror, the Toronto Star just put out a press release talking about why they're not showing the cover. Have you seen this?
No, I actually have a commitment to never watch the news ever or read the news because it's just so crazy. I haven't seen it, but however, I will jump in to say that Quebec is well, I don't know if you know, but Quebec is the French speaking part of the country, and I don't know what they're doing about this Charlie Hebdo thing. However, they've been enacting laws that say that like that, I don't know what it's called, that face covering that like Muslim women wear. It's just not allowed in public arenas, as well as like religious decoration. So if you wear like a cross or you have whatever else and it's religious and you're like a nurse or you're a lawyer or whatever, it just not gonna fly. And so they got a lot of flack from the rest of Canada saying, wait, you can't do that. Like it's freedom of whatever. But
but see, the Canadians are nice to their fault, to a fault. I mean, they are some of the nicest people around and are very accommodating and very tolerant, and they are being introduced to a set of ideas that should not be tolerated. And this is a weird moment in time, I think, where it's like, well, what should we do? First of all, the burqa has been outlawed in France, and so that if that's an offshoot from that, that's understandable. But this is a weird little tip of the iceberg moment. This is sort of tiptoeing around the larger theme of these people have terrible ideas. But the fact that you can't cover your face in public. I mean, can you imagine me going into a bank with a mask on? You know, like you just don't do that. You can't. And they are going to claim, oh, religion has to be respected, and that is the taboo that is being, you know, smashed into pieces now. Is that no, we don't have to respect your religion, and yes, it is open for criticism. I mean, and so covering your face in public, that's maybe one way where this conflict is gonna be seen and play out. But I find it interesting.
Yeah, to go back to what you said about whether or not I actually had conversations with my Muslim friends. I think that in a sense that I did. Like again, I'm looking at them, in sort of in hindsight now, in a lot of our interactions, but they don't. I don't think they really believed what was going on, right? Like I
Yeah,
would say that they're Muslim in name only, which
right.
I think is a lot of people maybe in the West, which is why we don't have what's going on in the Middle East happening here. Like
Yeah,
there's a
I mean, and there's something to be said that life in the West is better. Standard of living, there's just you have more upside to your life. There's more things to do. You have an economic future. You have positive things that can sort of occupy you, and you don't have to get all into a religion and start getting obsessive and fanatical about that. So that makes sense to me. And look at Jews. I mean, Jews are the most secular, like non-religious group of people, but they still call themselves Jews because they don't because they are Jews. They're culturally, they go with all the rituals and they love it all. It's nostalgic and it's their community, but they don't believe in it, and that goes for the people in Israel too. So that does make sense. But then again, Muslims in Canada, with the recent killer withstanding, they're not a problem for the world. In fact, I'm surprised you know so many Muslims. I mean, but we must have been a part of a city because there can't be that many in Canada. I know there's 0.6% of America is Muslim.
yeah,
Um,
no, yeah, I don't even know. Like again, like I was saying earlier that like my father had like a lot of religious books and was investigating everything. I grew up. I went to even though it's a funny story. Like even though I was Seventh Day Adventist, I went to a Catholic elementary school, which was torture. I'll talk about that in probably another podcast. And then my father had a lot of Muslim friends, so I guess that's where that came in. And I actually went to a Taekwondo school that was led by Muslims. So it was weird. Like we would we would be fighting or doing our I can't even remember what they're called, like those movements that they tell you to do that like they
mhm.
mark you on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we'd be doing that, and then we'd have a break, and then they would go for prayer, and I would just sort of chill out. And they'd always
Oh,
invite me to go. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. That's crazy. And then you could even see it there, like um, if you were to walk into that prayer room, which is underneath the gym, there was segregation, and it was again because I come from a single family home where I just had my mom. I was just like, this is kind of strange.
mhm.
And then even like I went back, a friend of mine died recently, so I went back to Toronto to attend his funeral, and he was Muslim, and it was a Muslim funeral. And I've seen a Muslim funeral before, but when I was younger, but it was something to see. Like they brought the body in, and they basically had a divider between the men and the woman. And I went with a friend who had a wife, and she had to go, she had to enter the building from the back and be in this special room with all the other women. And we asked the question like, what's the scenario here, so we can sort of understand, what we shouldn't do in this building, so that we can get out and we won't cause any problems. And basically, it was like, yeah, women are different. They're more emotional. They can't handle seeing a dead body. And like, I was in tears because I knew this guy for a long time. He was a great friend. And again, like I knew that the funeral was like his family was leading it. He wasn't that religious. He was dating a Hindu for Pete's sake. Like they can't do that. But anyway, so it was crazy. Like there was division there, and you couldn't say certain things. And a friend of mine that knew him as well was coming to the funeral, and he was late, and he was running in with shoes, and I was like, time out. I almost had to tackle him at the door because I knew that you had to take off your shoes when you enter a mosque. But like he didn't know. I don't think he cared. He just wanted to honor his friend. So anyway, long story short, like we had those conversations, but it just never. I don't think that the West believes as deeply as people in the East. It's a
Yeah.
different world, and every country is facing sort of a, what do we do about this? How do we communicate about it? Because There is a multicultural policy in Canada, and you have to respect other people's ideas and
Yeah, it's astonishing.
yeah, but at the same
I mean,
time, there are some bad ideas. Like we're in
yeah,
this weird ground.
I mean, you're highlighting again the tip of the iceberg of the problem of how Muslims treat women. Just this segregation in public places. Like you didn't talk about the rape or the abject subjugation, the you're allowed to beat your wife, you're allowed to, or the adultery laws. Women getting stoned, women not having even remotely the same rights. Forget about equal pay. Forget about pay. I mean, there's places where they cannot work. It is an atrociously a primitive, you know, system they've got there. So the question gets spun back onto you. Do you really stand behind what you believe? Do you believe in women's rights? It's like, and how much do you believe? Do you believe enough to say that somebody else is wrong if they don't believe that? Can you make the judgment? I think a lot of people get sort of timid when it comes to saying, I don't want to tell anybody they're wrong. Who am I to judge? And that to me is gross. That's like an insane way to go about life. I have no problem whatsoever telling somebody they're wrong based on myself, based on my own reasoning.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to back it up and defend it. But it's like, that's the world we live in, where it's just, no, who's to say anything's wrong? And let's all just, have it go on. And to me, that is morally insane.
Yeah, again, that's one of the main reasons why I sort of dropped my faith is that, like, if, like, let's say I was driving a car and someone, was waving as I was driving, and, I rolled down my window and he says, your tire's flat. And I'm like, well, I don't believe my tire's flat. Like, that's a bad call. Like, there are some things that, having faith in, like, you can have faith in a sports team. I think that Seattle's going to win the Super Bowl. Like, that, and, I believe based on, some factors. But that's still even based in reality. Like, it's not, but there are some diehard people that, like, the team can do no wrong, they will win. But, like, there are some things in life that you just can't, you're right, you have to be critical about where the ideas come from.
Yeah, and these are not hard, nuanced moral dilemmas we're talking about. Like, should we throw gay people off of buildings like they're doing in Syria right now? Let's go into a college and go to a philosophy class and let's debate that, because I think there's some two sides here. I'm not sure. Like, this is obvious. Like, it's insane. Like, we're just talking about women's rights. If that was the only thing the Muslims were wrong about, that would be enough to have this be a crisis. The only thing that is wrong with the Muslim world is that they are subjugating 50% of their population. Like, but it's so not. That's not the only thing. It's one of dozens of bad ideas.
Right.
Like the blasphemy laws, their policy on apostates, killing, Sharia law. Everything involved in Sharia law is an absolute outrage.
Now,
Their views are.
Do you think that like, these things exist and that's in the world right now? But do you think that this is actually coming out of religious belief, or sort of the other elements in that culture that are sort of leading out of there? Like, I understand that, like, not everything that they're doing is explicitly written in the Quran, right? Like,
Yeah.
so that has to be coming either from, like, their clerics or their religious leaders or what have you, and they might just be winging it. How much of this is, like, them winging it versus what they actually believe to be the case?
Now, this is an interesting point, and this is a point that I think deserves to be made and is almost never made. And what you just attempted to do, and what we're now diving into, is why people are the way they are. Now, while that is fascinating and interesting, this doesn't take away from what they are, and what they are doing is atrocious, and they need to be condemned for what they are doing. This is the same way as, like, oh, there's a serial killer that was just caught. He killed 20 people. That's what he is. He's a cold-blooded murderer. During that court case, you're going to find him guilty, and you're going to punish him according to the fact that he killed 20 people. The discussion of why he did it is so secondary. It is a distant second. But I will dive into it, because I believe that it is all connected to the ideas from Islam. I mean, what you said, you sort of suggested that there were some cultural things. Culture is religion. In these sectors, the religion is this all-encompassing thing that it defines their culture. It's not me saying this. This is them saying this. I mean, they will tell you this morning, noon, and night, that it is all about Muhammad and his teachings, and you can draw direct lines for all of these ideas I'm talking about. And I'm talking about apostasy, jihad, martyrdom, their views on women, their views on gays, their views on the unbelievers, and their views on the fact that they need to subjugate, convert, or sort of kill people that don't believe. I mean, that is all coming from this book. Now, if you get rid of the book, it's not going to solve the problem, because this is a rich tradition. You know, this is what they know. This is what their parents know, their grandparents, their in-laws. This is their city, their country. This is a massive phenomenon, and you're not just going to argue them out of this. You know, this has a 1,400-year running start, and we're coming into it trying to be like, hey guys, maybe you might want to question some of these things. You know, you and I are going to live and die, and this is going to be as prevalent an issue for our grandchildren, which is depressing. But once you accept that, it's sort of, I mean, who knows? Who knows what 100 years of the internet is going to do? Christianity, compared to Islam, Christianity is pathetically in its death throes. I mean, it is awkward. It is awkward to watch the squirming of these ideas being held up to the light for the first time, like cockroaches in your kitchen when you turn on the kitchen light. I mean, that they cannot win this argument, and yet that's going to have a slow death, like some bad B movie where the guy gets shot and he takes 3 minutes to die. You know, it's going to be like that. But more and more people are going to be shamed out of existence. Like, there are people right now that will tell you that the sun goes around the earth. You know, I watch a video, a guy was telling me that. There's flat earthers. There's people that don't believe in, there's conspiracy nuts. The 9/11 truthers. I mean, these people exist, but they are so socially crippled. They're castrated. Nobody takes them seriously. And that's what religious thought and religious people will be eventually, I think. But don't hold your breath, because you're going to be dead in the ground before.
Yeah, I don't think we're at the Star Trek level yet, where we're all working as one, just because. Exactly. Yeah.
And it's a shame, but you'd like to think that humans are these grandiose, sort of noble creatures. We're not. We are animalistic as ever. We're no different than these other groups and other animals. And it is pathetic to think where would we be now if we had a Star Trek mentality 2,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. We come from very humble, simplistic, fearful, ignorant beginnings, and it's very apparent. And wherever you find yourself, you wake up, boom, this is where you are in human history. Part of you is a little bit bitter that we're not a little bit further, but you have to take it and with a grain of salt and sort of be optimistic and make the most of where you do find yourself. But it still is incredibly aggravating.
So where do you see your YouTube channel going from here? Are you going to continue with this news as it develops? Is this going to be like the theme, or are you going to continue to just analyze whatever comes across your desk?
Well, I mean, I think I was pretty sure about when I started what my point was. A lot of people have different points. There's a lot of people that just want validation as a human being. They just want sort of some quasi F-list celebrity status. Hey, look, I'm important and my life is going well. Why? Because I have 100,000 followers. This is the sort of sickness of Facebook likes and Twitter followers and all that crap. I don't care about that. That's part of the reason why I don't show my face, and I don't really care actually that much. But I do care because I have an intellectual satisfaction from discussing these things and from exposing sort of heinous bullshit when I see it. But my agenda is basically to consolidate atheists for the first time in human history, to say, hey, stand up and be counted. I'm here. This is what I think. You're not crazy. These people are insane. That, I think, is an end in and of itself. Aside from that, it's to openly mock, insult, and shame people who hold these awful, false, ludicrous ideas. And again, for the first time in history, on a scale like this. So it's incredibly satisfying to do that. And as far as which avenue that goes in, I mean, I could make about 1,000 videos in a row right now about Christians. you know, Jews don't excite me as much. There's like 0.0% of the world is Jewish. Jews are like a unicorn. If you see a Jew, it's like finding a unicorn, basically. There's so few, and it's like over 50% of them don't even believe this crap. So to me, that's, I don't know, like making a video about Orthodox Jewish people. It's like, ugh. I mean, I could go through every sect of Christianity and mock them too, but it's like, come on. I mean, anyway, I mean, the Islamic thing is so pressing and it's so egregious. I mean, for example, this Japanese guy just got beheaded, and the next one's probably being beheaded right now. How do you process that? Like, what internally? You read that in the paper. Well, I guess you don't read the news, but
yeah, I know, but I hear about it. I like
right.
YouTube. It shows up.
So how does a guy in Canada? How does it faze you? What is your emotional process to know that an innocent man just got beheaded for Bronze Age barbarism?
Well, I think that it's horrible. That's as much as I can do from where I am. Like,
but is there any internal sort of, how do you rationalize it? Like, do you just move on with your day? I mean, at what point, like, how do you process it? Like, because I don't think there is one answer. I'm just
I think just for me, like I take it in and be like, oh, that's pretty horrible. And again, like, this podcast is for my son, so like I'm hoping that he gets from this interview that like what you think matters and that you shouldn't let things slide. So like at the end of the day, you should when working with people, we're safe. Like, I'm not going to fly to somewhere in the East and start saying, you guys this is just wrong. That's insane. But at the same time, like, even recording this podcast and putting it up and saying, you know what, at the end of the day, there are some religious beliefs that are crazy, and we need to acknowledge that so we can move forward. Like, if we just put it under the rug, then forget about it. Like, again, like, just to reference that podcast I did with my Jehovah's Witness friend, he basically started having doubts, and he investigated this on his own, and then like years later he shared it with his wife, and his wife ratted him out to the congregation, to his family, and to his to her family as well, and just, in my opinion, wrecked his life, because like he's now been not officially to fellowship, but he's pretty much shunned. He hasn't seen any of his family for years, and that's a bad idea. Like, everyone, I think, can say, if you believe something so much that there's no evidence for, and you no longer want to help your family, talk to your family, communicate with your family, that's wrong. And at the same time, if you have a civilization, or even it doesn't even have to be a civilization. If you're in a scenario by which, for example, there's a woman and she wants to drive, and you catch her driving, and you punish her because she's driving, whatever idea that comes from, it has to be wrong. So, like, at the end of the day, I'm holding these ideas to share with my son, to say, you know what, we need to move forward, and we need to do something different. But there's nothing really, like, on the West Coast, there's not too much. There's no religion here on Vancouver Island. Like, I think it's the least religious place in Canada, so it's rare to get into any sort of religious discussion, or even, I would say, it's rare to get into these type of discussions where people say, did you hear about that thing in the news? That's crazy. Yeah. Like, that never happens. But like in Toronto, where I was from, going back to what you said, I lived near Bathurst and Wilson, which was actually an Orthodox, it's really funny. It was an Orthodox area where there was a lot of Jewish people there. Because we're Seventh-day Adventists, we would be going to church and they would be going to the synagogue at the same time. So I could have high-fived 1,000 Orthodox Jews almost every week. But at the same time, like, it was a very, like, if you haven't been to Toronto, you should go. Everyone's there. Like, the whole world congregates in Toronto. But you just have to say, you know what's the deal with that? And if you have friends who are Muslim that actually subscribe to, any belief that it's real, being like, you know what's going on here? And I think at some levels you have to sort of be like, you know what, we have to talk about this, because this is crazy. If this is what's happening in your life in the background, and we just play basketball on the weekdays, we actually have to talk about this, because this is crazy. Because again, I play ball hockey with some friends who are Christian, and I don't believe what they believe, but they're not doing anything that I'm aware of that jeopardizes someone else's life or their or where they, their ideas for who they want to be in life or anything like that, right? Like they, I'm sure there's like, you could bring up points about how Christians in general aren't, good with the homosexual community or whatever. But at the end of the day, that stuff is so not visible that it's almost not an issue that you have to address just to hang out with a person, right? But
Well, yeah, I mean, you're talking about some of these sticky situations that arise and are just a reality today, which is, how do you coexist in a world where most of the people in the world are deeply religious, or at least religious? So we are the freaks, we are the outcasts, we are the ones that, are against the mainstream, and even more so in your case because you came from a family that was religious, and there's a lot of psychological stuff at play there. How you want to make your parents proud of you. Everybody does. That's like a very primal thing. So to deny, to go against their deeply held, profound religious beliefs, that is in contrast with your other desire to make your parents happy, to make them proud of you. So that's a situation I never had to deal with as much. But I grew up in Los Angeles, and in the same community that Sam Harris did. In a secular family, in a very liberal sort of city like Los Angeles, and even then there's tons of religiosity all around. So this is a messy process to get out of, and like you say, having friendships with religious people. I mean, obviously, as an atheist, I'm not going to sit here and say that's a terrible idea, because they're good people, they're nice people, they're funny, they're great. I mean, yeah, they're dead wrong. But that's not a deal breaker necessarily, unless they start getting into territory like some of these Muslim ideas, or there's, I don't know. It's a personal choice at that point, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the future holds here. I guess I never asked you one question I was interested in is what was the singular thing that made you become an atheist?
Yeah. So, have you ever gone to church before, ever?
Yeah, a couple times.
Okay, so you may know that they ask you to sit, they ask you to stand, and there's a lot of commands that they issue from the pulpit. So, anyways, I was there one day and I had a sore throat, and I said, you know what, I'm just not going to sing. Because they had opening. Actually, I should back up. The church that I went to, it had, get this, they started at 8:30 in the morning, and they went straight with no break to 1 p.m. And then you went home, had lunch, and then you came back, and you stayed at the church from like 3 to sundown. So like, in the wintertime, that's like 3 to 4, but in the summertime, that's like 3 to 9. It was a full Saturday commitment. Like, there was no getting around it.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So anyways, one day I was just like, you know what? There's opening song. There was the singing time. There was just so much song. And I was like, my throat actually hurts. I'm not doing it today. And so...
This setup sounds like a hot dog factory for churning out atheists. You spend one day there.
Yeah. So I just stopped singing. And believe it or not, like, I realized I was able to, still standing and like kneeling or whatever. But I looked around and I was looking at these people and I'm like, are they actually just repeating words, or are they thinking about what they're saying? Because again, like I wasn't just fully 100% Seventh-day Adventist. Like, again, like I said, I went to a Catholic elementary school, and I think my mom originally was Anglican and my dad was looking into 1,000 things. So like, already was questioning some ideas anyways, but there was some songs. Well, let me just get into it because this is actually pretty quick. Seventh-day Adventists believe in the Trinity, which basically means that like God proper, Yahweh, is not the same as Jesus and is not the same as the Holy Spirit, yet they're one being somehow. I actually believe that it was one being, but he could manifest himself in a variety of ways. So like, he could show up as an angel behind you, but he's still like 100% God. So believe it or not, like, that's actually a huge dividing line on Christianity, whether or not like
Oh my
there's this
god.
Trinity or this oneness. So
Ah,
anyway, long story short, there was a
love it.
song, and where it's talking about the triune God. I'm like, I as a Christian, I don't believe in the triune God, right? So
That's funny.
I'm looking around, and I'm like, are these people thinking about what they're singing, or are they just singing it? And so I started reviewing hymns, and if you look at how hymns are constructed,
Mhm.
they are basically like self help books that, you know, they have lyrics that tell you how to think, and so even at a young age, at about like 16, 17, I was like, wait a minute. If I'm just repeating something that's telling me how to think and using very active words, am I just not coaching myself to believe this thing that I'm repeating? Like it sounds like this is like a training program, even though like I didn't really recognize it as that at the time. But it's church is a training program to like double down on your beliefs. So anyway, by stopping singing, I was like, you know what, this doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
And it's
it's
weird.
amazing.
Like you walk into a
Yeah,
building and someone says kneel, and like 500 people kneel all at once, and you're just like, what is happening here?
yeah, scary.
If anyone
Um,
like, if I go into a room and someone says kneel, I'm thinking I'm going to try to leave because who knows what's going to happen next.
right, fall to your knees. That ironically, that's one of my favorite songs. One of the Christmas carols where I say, "Fall on your knees and do 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 do." Like that. That's a beautiful musically, but yeah, I'm not gonna fall on my knees for anybody. What are you talking about?
I know it's
But
crazy.
I love the fact that your process to atheism basically involved you thinking. So
Totally.
like
I just
critical thought was the end of it.
yeah, and I ended up taking a computer programming and analysis program at a college in Toronto, and again, that was like you need to think to solve this problem. And so the next part was like, okay, what else in this religion is crazy? And it just fell apart. Like they do this tithing thing where you have to give 10% of your money,
Right?
which is an astronomical amount if you think about it. Like there are 500. Like if everyone made $1,000 and there's a month or whatever, which is not anywhere near what people make, but $1,000 at 10% times 500 people for 12 months, like that, that is a lot of wasted
Right.
time and
And so
money.
what do you do? Yeah. What happens with that? You pay for the rent. You pay for the salaries of the church employees, and now you got a whole wad that you're going to spend on propagating these myths and brainwashing the children. And but then you'll throw a little charity work in there so that it's all kosher with the public at large. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
I,
so I was just like, I can't do this. And then I decided to put that lens on the Bible, and there's this prophecy. That's where Seventh Day Adventists get a lot of people, is they claim to know prophecy and their prophecy's accurate and all this
reverse
stuff.
engineered prophecy. Love it.
Yeah, and so there's this one prophecy you may be aware, where it talks about Jesus being Emmanuel and him being the savior of mankind. It's in Isaiah somewhere. Anyway, so they always like quote mine that one verse because there's another verse in the Gospels that talk about Jesus being Emmanuel. So I decided I'm going to read this whole chapter. So it says there's going to be the son born that will save Israel, and his name will be Emmanuel. And I kid you not, like 4 verses down, the child was born, and it was actually Isaiah's son, which is supposedly the writer of that book. And so I'm like, wait a minute. So I went to everybody that I knew, and I said, could you read this whole chapter, and then we'll talk. So they read the chapter, and I'm like, it seems like this prophecy is fulfilled like within 90 days. What's going on here? And the pastor at the time, and a lot of my friends and family said, yeah, it's a dual prophecy, and that's that
Dual prophecy.
that's when I was just like, I think I'm officially done here, because you could dual
Yeah,
prophecy anything till you're
that doesn't
blue in the
make any sense
face.
at all.
A
That doesn't
dual
make any sense.
prophecy. When
Yeah,
was I going to be told about the dual prophecy? If you said that,
I
like,
love it.
if Christianity, like, as you came in, like, do you want to accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior? Yes. I'm like, to do so, you have to believe in a dual prophecy. Then I'd be like, forget it. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, any one of these things is enough to just throw the entire thing in the toilet. But like, I love the fact that this triune God thing you're talking about. I mean, the foundational belief of this sect of Christianity and it breaks the law of non-contradiction. Like, it just flat out is not possible to have a setup like that.
Yeah.
I also love the fact that all three of these tri-union thing they're all not in existence. They're all made up. it's not one of them is real. They're all totally fictional, and I love that. It's like when I start hearing Christians talk about the devil. That's when it just gets to next level theater of the absurd.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sitting here telling them there's no God. They're like, well, let's consider the devil. Let's talk about Satan for a while. It's like, oh my God, just copy and paste everything I just said about God and just swap out the word Satan and devil. And it's exactly the same. But it's beautiful. Like, we are arguing 20 levels deep into fan fiction.
Yeah.
Into like primitive fan fiction. It's just amazing.
Yeah, it would be like arguing over Harry Potter. Like, there's this book that I never read in, maybe this was elementary school, high school. I wasn't a fan of people telling me what to read anyways, but they gave me this book called The Chrysalids, which is this... It's a really good novel. I actually ended up reading it later in life. But they gave me this book. I read the Coles Notes, passed the test. But it's about this this nuclear disaster happens or something. And in Eastern Canada, this group survives on remnants of the Bible. And so, like, I was thinking, like, what would happen if there was, like, a nuclear bomb that went off, destroyed everything, and you were left with the Harry Potter books? And, like...
Wait, were they eating the Bible? Or how?
No, they're surviving on the ideologies found in, like, a tattered Bible that only has, like, 70% of the Bible. So they basically fill in what they want to believe. And they end up killing, like, a lot of people that are, like... I think they call them deviants. Basically, like, people that didn't act or think or behave in ways that everyone else did. Basically, anyone that thought differently. Like, it's... I'll put the link in for the description in that if anyone wants to check it out. But what would happen if, like, there was some catastrophe and we were left with parts of Harry Potter? Like, we would be stuck debating, elements of that book in the same way that, like, people debate elements of the Bible. Like, it's... Yeah,
it's a disastrous idea to harp and dedicate your life to a book that you don't even know who wrote it and is just palpably wrong and stupid and ignorant.
Yeah.
There's a movie sort of about, like, what you're talking about with Denzel Washington, and where it's like there's one Bible left in the world and he's, like, protecting it, or because it holds all the power and all the human wisdom.
Yeah, the Book of Eli.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, just these like thinly veiled Christian sort of propaganda stuff. It happens everywhere, all over the map. But it is absurd to me. I mean, why are you defending this book? I mean, we haven't discussed morality, but I mean, morally speaking, you could not get a more blood-soaked, disgusting book than the Bible. Well, you could, the Quran, but I mean, these are just who in their right mind would defend this? And how do you even? I don't know. Do you watch the debates online? Like, have you seen, sort of theist versus atheist debates?
Oh yeah, I watched a few. The Ken Ham versus Bill
physic-
Nye and so forth.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the creation debate. I mean, do you get physically uncomfortable? It is awkward to see a grown person try to defend this.
Again, like, I used to be a part of that. Like, I totally know where that comes from. The whole, like, well, you need to consider it in this light, and it's like there's nothing there. It's just a mind game. It's like you develop the labyrinth, and you're running the labyrinth in your mind.
But once you can see these moves that people make and the games that they are playing and expose them, like,
it's brutal to watch. Brutal.
Yeah, I mean, like, fallacies. Who knew about fallacies 10 years ago? Now we have an online discussion. We are sort of creating cliff notes and shortcuts to being like, okay, well, that is a straw man. Well, what is a straw man? It's a fallacy, and here's what it's about. And so you could sort of cut to the chase. Like, these religious arguments that they keep coming up with are just violating these same fallacies over and over again, and we're speeding up the time it takes to disregard them entirely.
Like a bug tracker, like that's hilarious.
It's just fast forward through this. It's like what you said is baseless, and it's just an assertion, and you have nothing to back it up. And what you're just presenting here is circular logic, and people are becoming familiar with these terms, and so the tide is rising. Like, people cannot get away with this stuff anymore. Oh, and then so to the point now where we have presuppositionalists. This argument of just, I mean, I can't even believe it's gotten to this point where there's a God. That's it. There is a God. How dare you deny his existence?
Yeah, what's his name? Side,
10.
yeah, that
Yeah,
guy, Side 10. Let's just call him Side
oh,
10. Yeah,
right.
oh my gosh.
I mean,
Um,
that is, I can't even believe Matt Dillahunty had the patience or the desire to debate that guy. I mean, that if that's the best you have, and I don't know if you've seen the videos on my channel. There's many videos where I don't comment on them.
yeah, you just let him run.
I
Yeah.
mirror them. I mean, what does it tell you about the other person's argument that somebody who seeks comedy, is simply copying and pasting and re-uploading their video without being touching it? I mean, that that is a bad state of being. That your argument might be weak if the other person is simply putting a microphone to you and underlining what you're saying. Ah, I mean, it's beautiful. It's unintentional comedy, and I eat it up.
Yeah, that's surprising to me. Like, even like if I was teleported back while I was still 7 Day Adventist and I bumped into a pre-sup that was just like, well, you just know, you know, just look around. That's the evidence. That
Right.
would I would just be like, you're wrong. Like, that makes no sense. Because even even when I was a 7 Day Adventist, you had to wrap your head around a lot of theological ideas, and that just seems like they didn't even bother to show up to that game. Like, they were just like,
Oh,
well, if you don't believe what I believe, then you're wrong. That's all
it's
that it is.
yeah. They can't engage. They don't want to engage. They don't want to think. And you'd be surprised how many people that is their argument is. Look around. Look at all this stuff. Look at these trees. Look at the stars. That is somehow their best argument, and it's fascinating. Even today, you hear people say that. Sarah Palin, one of the earlier videos I did, she was amazed. And then, God, there was this actress, Andie MacDowell, stands up at a Intelligence Squared debate. They're talking about religious stuff. It's like Lawrence Krauss versus a couple of theists, and she says, how do you explain an orchid? You guys are scientists. Can you recreate an orchid? Because I mean, it's just like it makes you want to cry. I mean, crying or laughing is a fine line between the two, but it's astonishing. I mean, the difference I will say between you and I is probably typically people that come out of Christianity have more compassion and sympathy for those who remain in it, and I acknowledge that I am much more harsh and unsympathetic, but I believe that my harshness comes from a place of actually love. It's like tough love. It's not helping anybody to pussyfoot and to baby them and to say, oh, well, if it makes you happy or this or that. Um, but most of the atheists on my channel, I'd say 95%, used to be religious.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm actually surprised that they can stomach my disdain for the religious. But my disdain does come from a place of, like, for example, if I saw you smoking, if I cared about you, I would get in your face and say, what the hell are you doing smoking?
Yeah.
Stop it immediately. If I didn't care about you, I would say, go for it. I don't care. Smoke away, It's so like that. That's essentially where I'm coming from. It's like I scold them, I shame them, I mock them for their own benefit, for humanity's benefit.
Well, I probably would say that a better analogy is like if they were advocating for smoking.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, if they were like, yeah, you should try this. You're like, what are you doing? What are you talking about? But like,
Yeah, the analogy is even worse. It's not just somebody smoking. That if religion was just equating to somebody smoking, that'd be great. The analogy is that they are smoking and blowing the smoke down their child's throats. Like hotboxing their children, and then taking it out and just spreading it all over the world and it's a cancer. It's like Hitchens said, religion is poison. I mean, I don't know. There's probably something to that smoking analogy, but yeah, it's I don't do it to be mean. And keep in mind, I will throw in the caveat here of I acknowledge that my little YouTube channel with a few thousand followers doesn't really mean a damn thing. I might change a couple of minds and have an impact and make a few atheists laugh, but I mean, I am a minor cog in this global movement of sort of awakening to what is actually real. It's a multi-pronged assault. It's interesting to behold. If nothing else, it's an interesting time to live. You have to agree, yeah.
yeah, things are definitely happening. Yeah, it's I have no idea where we'll go. Like, it's almost like I was talking to a friend of mine, and again, I was born in the 80s. And in my opinion, the 80s were the worst years to be born because technology moved at such a pace that you couldn't invest in anything, right? Like, as soon as like cassettes were cool, there was CDs, and then there were laser discs, and then there was DVDs and HD DVDs, and like it's like
Blu-ray.
Things changed so fast that like you can believe that they changed, and you weren't shocked that they changed, but like you know the things that you loved were gone. Like there was no lasting. It wasn't like having a record that you played throughout the 70s and it was still your favorite record. Like anyway, so I think that like that's what's going to happen with ideas now, in that what is it, 2015 and on, all the people that are born today, like all ideas are just, you know, fair game on the internet, as long as, you know, governments and the news media allows for that, right? Like I think they have a stake in sort of shaping people's minds, but free speech is sort of like taking off, and hopefully it'll stay that way, and we'll get to a place where we can actually say, you know what, these are some pretty bad ideas, and we can't work with these people anymore. Or
well, yeah, that's it. It's a melting pot. These ideas are being confronted and exposed and dissected for the first time ever, on a massive scale, and that's not good for religion at all. But it's almost like you know, why do scientists use mice or bacteria when they're studying sort of trends like DNA trends or evolutionary science? They do that because they have short lifespans and they can sort of test multiple generations very fast.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the internet is basically giving us this forum for a big test. It's a natural selection. Which ideas are going to survive this? And before this, we didn't have that sort of interplay. We didn't have all these ideas being confronted and sort of tested, and which ones are going to survive. So it's almost like Reddit. It's like Reddit, you know, which are the videos that are going to rise to the top? Who's going to survive this challenge? And that's what's so fascinating, is we're seeing this ugly, awkward, clumsy process of saying, okay, well, these ideas are terrible, and these ideas should move to the top. You know, this is a long, drawn-out upvoting process for good ideas.
Right. Okay. Anyway, my podcast is normally 30 minutes, but what are we? This is like an hour now. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much for coming on my show. I really appreciate it. Keep making the videos you do.
Thanks very much. I enjoyed it immensely, and yeah, I look forward to listening back to it at some point.
Okay. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.